The last elasticity that we speak of is called the cross elasticity of demand, or also known as Xed. Basically, it's about Xed is about how will the quantity demanded for good A, or demand for good A, in fact I should be writing demand for good A is going to be when there is a change in the price of good B. How will the demand for good A change if there is a change in the price of good B? So it basically talks about two types of goods. One is substitutes and one is complements. Okay. Now, substitute goods are the replaceable goods, the alternative goods. Okay. And what we will see in this is that I'll explain it through the diagram, the formula again, because you're required to explain it through the diagram, through the formula in your exam. Let's suppose if the price of good B increases by 10%, and as a result the demand for good A went up. Okay, the price of good B went up, the demand for good A, let me change that, demand for good A went up. So that gives me a value of +2. Okay, now whenever you have a value of plus, that means the two goods are substitutes. If ever you get confused, you know what, just change the product that we're talking about. Let's make this as Pepsi and let's make this as Coke. Now it'll make more sense. If the price of Pepsi goes up, the demand for Coke is going to rise. Now, is it rising by 2? Or a second case, when the price went up by 10%, the demand only went up by 5%. Now, this is the case about elastic or inelastic. Okay, same idea. Since Xcd over here is greater than 1, we're saying it's elastic. And over here, it's less than 1, that means it's inelastic. Now, logic says a 10% change in price caused a 20% change in demand. This means that these two goods are definitely close substitutes. That's why there was such a big change. But in the second case, a 10% only lead to a 5% increase in the price. So that means they are weaker substitutes. Okay, not much of the change happens. Similarly, the shifts are not going to be that big as well. Okay. Number 2 is complement goods. Now, the deal with complement goods are, these are jointly demanded goods. That's a good, the goods that are used together, jointly demanded. These are different terms that you can use for it, jointly demanded. Now, what's happening in this one? Well, let's see. What happens to the demand for A when there is a change in the price for B? So, let's say if there is a 10% increase in the price for good B, the demand fell by 20% in this one, -2. So let's think of it like this. If the price of sugar increased by 10%, the demand for tea will fall by 20%. What this signifies is that Xcd has a much bigger change. It's greater than 1 now, because this minus ka sign is only telling us कि ये तो complement goods हैं. Since the change is so big, that means they are a strong complements. That's why there has been a much bigger uh, change in the demand for the other good. However, if the case was that price went up by 10% and the demand just fell by 5%, this is showing a negative to 0.5, and since Xcd is less than 1, it's inelastic. And in case of inelastic, we know that they are weak complements because it did not have much big of an effect. So the shifts are going to be relatively smaller as well. Okay, and the last one, what if Xcd is 0? Okay, so when Xcd is 0, we say the two goods are completely unrelated. How can you get a 0? Well, let's do that. Percentage change in demand for good A over percentage change in price for good B. Price went up by 10%, but demand did not change. Why? Because they're unrelated. They have nothing to do with each other. People will continue to buy whatever they're buying. So this basically concludes our idea of cross velocity. Now, how can the firms use this knowledge? Well, it's very simple, because you have to recognize if you and the other good is substitute, and if they change their price, it's going to have an impact on your industry. Now, whether is it going to have a big effect or a small effect, you will have to know the elasticities, because you're going to make your strategies according to that. If the two goods are complements, again, if the other industry changes its price, you're going to see an impact of it. Big impact or small impact is going to affect your demand. So